The Fantasmagorium show is proud to present Money, Murder in Minnesota, a retrospective and review of all things Fargo. A new season of Fargo is imminent, and we can't skip to the end without taking a look back at the beginning. Tonight, we are discussing episodes 5 and 6 of the first season of Fargo. Numbers and Wrench find their target, finally. Lester attempts to cover his tracks, and Malvo is just doing Malvo things. Stavros perceives some wrath of God, and then there's Molly and Gus. Kat is here. I am Scotty R37, and Steve is grabbing soy sauce and Mai Tais. How you doing, Kat?
Good.
Excellent. Are you enjoying your 7-3 watch?
Yes, and it's interesting to watch it as not like a binge thing like I usually do. It's kind of I haven't watched it with like 1 or 2 episodes at a time since the originally premiered, so it's nice to kind of sit and stew on it because it's been long enough since I last saw it that some of the details are like refreshing, because I haven't remembered all of it.
Well, and it is a little interesting to have the availability to binge it, but I'm not. I'm doing it 2 by 2 as we progress. But I am a little disappointed in the people who do binge it, and I'm guilty of this just by the nature of seeing the thumbnails of each episode. So I kind of have a sense. I know we're going to get some more guest stars kicking shortly. I didn't realize that other things were going to happen in the 6th episode, but I do appreciate this as being at the time of release on like FX, it being somewhat sort of event television. You had to show up day and all right, it's a new episode of Fargo tonight, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah, and my Blu-rays don't have thumbnails on it, so if I don't remember exactly what happens in each episode, so it doesn't spoil it. It's just It just has the titles for each of the Buddhist koans that they're named after. This first one is the 6 Ungraspables, which is the 5 senses and the mind.
Mm-hmm. Which I don't know. I'm gonna have to figure out how to apply that here. You can help. And same deal with episode 6, which is Buridan's ass.
Yes, it's the donkey that has placed halfway between water and food. It's equally hungry and thirsty, and it can't make up its mind which one it wants to go to first, so it dies, having not made a decision.
And if anything, I'm just happy to learn these parables as I go. I can sort of apply these in my day-to-day life, and people will think I'm pretentious. It's great. But before we get into the episodes, there's something interesting that I discovered, because obviously as you do research, as you watch certain things and look certain things up as you move along, the algorithms, they sort of, they throw things at you. So I've been getting spatterings of Fargo related material, mostly about the film. And there was a brief interview with, it was like a YouTube short with William H. Macy. And he was talking about in the film how a couple of weeks into filming, he said, so tell me about the true story that this is based on. And the Coen brothers were like, oh, there's no true story. And William H. Macy is like, what do you mean there's no true story? We made it up. We made it all up. And it's like, well, you can't do that. And so then it cuts to Frances McDormand, who is sitting there and saying it was all calculated, because if you tell an audience at the beginning of the movie that this is all a true story, then they will follow you because they figure, all right, well, if this is a true story, truth is stranger than fiction, so we'll go. And the deception goes even further in that there's an interview with the Coen brothers on Charlie Rose, I think, and they're talking about how it was like sort of pieced together from different news stories and whatnot. So it was very interesting to find out, finally, after having seen the movie and 4 episodes of the show, that when it says this is all based on a true story, no, it's not. I love it.
Yeah, it was just something they used to get, like you said, it gives them creative license to do seemingly unnatural things in your story, and because it's true, the audience will go along and trust you on it.
And then even Peter Stormare shows up in the short, and he's like, well, it is a true story, even though it didn't happen. And it's like, oh, Stormare, you weirdo, I love you so much.
Well, it's a true story. Like, yes. I can't swear, like in No Country for Old Men, when the sheriff's like, I can't swear to every detail, but it's certainly true that it is a story.
Absolutely. But speaking of which, for this almost not a true story, spoilers for episodes 5 and 6, if you haven't seen it. So we hope you're following along, if you're following along. If not, then here are the Coles notes. So we pick up in this episode where we left off at the end of the last one, with Lester being in jail, caged with Wrench and Numbers. And, well,
we get the flashback first.
Oh, that's true.
Yes, where he goes to the store, and for some reason the socks have are intermixed, where they're half ladies' socks, half men's socks. And the guy at the counter's like, yeah, it's not really clear why. Just make me an offer. And he's like, well, $1 million would probably be too much, but make me an offer. $1. He just does this great deadpan stare. $2, $3. Tell you what, how about you give me $55 and I'll throw in this 12 gauge? And he's like, okay. And he takes it home. And of course, the first thing his wife says, oh, that thing's dangerous. Oh, well, it's unloaded. Well, if anybody could shoot themselves in the head with an unloaded gun, it's you, Lester. And then he puts it on top of the shelf, and then they do the transition from when he gets it to prepare what was his plan to kill Malvo. And then we see how the shotgun pellet flies through the sheriff and into Lester's hand.
With an interesting sort of time lapse of the infection in the hand and whatnot. And so then we're back to the present, where it is Wrench and Numbers and Lester in the jail cell. And Numbers sort of presses Lester into say, when we were on the ice, you said that there was a him. Who's him? And he's like, oh, I was just making it up. I didn't know. No, you seem to say it as if there was a face in mind. And so he's trying to weasel his way out of it. And Wrench takes off his boot, takes off his sock, lunges at Lester, and shoves his sock in his mouth. And Numbers squeezes Lester's wounded hand and basically just says, tell us, or just tell us. Then he's going to throw up. And obviously, whether it be the infection or the sock in his mouth.
He does give them the name, though.
I'm sorry?
He does give them the name, Lorne Malvo.
Like that fella from Bonanza.
Yeah.
Want to say hi to Cam. Hey, Cam.
Hey.
It's good. Hi, Scotty and Catherine. It's good to see you. Have fun. Will do, sir. Thank you so much. I hope you're doing well. So he gives the name, and then he's ill. And we get Molly. That's when Molly goes and talks to Bill?
Yeah, and Bill tells her that, oh yeah, because he's finally starting to listen to what she's saying, because she's mentioning how, we know that this guy Malvo was at the motel, and the lady there described him, and he had the tokens from the Lucky Penny, and this is on the same night that the guy died, and this is probably the same description, matches that of the guy from my case, who had the head injury, went into the hospital the same day that Lester did. And Bill is actually finally starting to listen, because he's realizing that his silly theory that he's been clinging to doesn't necessarily make sense. And she's like, well, we got to go talk to Lester again, because he made a phone call. The phone records show that he called that motel asking for this Malvo guy. And he's like, well, he can't. He's not at home. Oh, he's at work? No, he's in jail. Yeah, he took a shot at Knudsen, who's been leading the case for no apparent reason, and I told him to sleep it off. And it's funny when they both go in there to see him, and he's just lying on the floor, like passed out, and you just see how bad this injury is getting. And so they finally take him to the hospital, and he's all delirious in the ambulance. And Molly's still working the theory that, oh, Lester had to have hired and paid Malvo to do this, or he stiffed him on the payment. And he's like, no, I never paid him. But the way Lester's saying it, it almost makes it sound like he's agreeing with their theory that he hired him, only that he didn't pay. So that's just bolstering Molly's belief that Lester hired this guy. But eventually he's just too delirious to answer. And eventually he does finally get the necessary surgery. And they're like, yeah, it was a shotgun pellet. And it's like, oh, shit.
Well, and then not only that, but the doctor says it was a shotgun pellet and there was cloth. There on the shotgun pellet, it looks like it may have passed through someone before getting into Lester's hand, and so all of this is sort of piquing Molly's interest. But luckily, is it Ida?
Yeah, that was the thing. Bill was more interested in planning the big delivery, which is nice that the colleagues are helping her out and stuff, but it's like that's Bill. The big thing on Bill's agenda is just like, yeah, let's not solve the case. He's not remotely interested in finding out who killed the sheriff or where he went or why he would have killed Pearl or anything like that. Now we got to take care of Ida and the baby, which is great. And you could tell that Ida is not satisfied with whatever Bill has to say about it because she just asked Molly very upfront, "You want it?" And she's like, "Yeah, I don't want to know the details. You want it?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm on it."
Which is great, and it does. Again, I really enjoy the police aspect of it, the crime aspect of it, but in Fargo, at least in reference to the film, and I'm sure we'll see this going forward throughout the other series, is those like sort of brief interpersonal quirks and whatnot. And there are cutaways and things like that when like eventually when we get to the crime syndicate having Chinese food. They're just quirky little moments with that sort of draw out the humanity of the situation, which, you know, that keeps me hanging on. It's not just Law and Order or CSI or anything.
Yeah, the guys at the restaurant when they're all just eating and they're discussing the Chinese food in Fargo, and he's like, Sam Hess. Yeah, we sent wrench and numbers. They're calling up. Like, I'm not interested. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's extramarital. I don't care if it's unrelated. Dead, not apprehended. Dead, head in the bag. That's the message. And they're like, okay, boss.
All right. Well, and then, yeah, good luck. We do. And so through the process, Lester's in the hospital and he's been treated for his hand injury, but he's got a policeman waiting outside of his hospital room, and he's not allowed to leave. The nurse comes up and says, "Is everything okay with you?" Oh, right. And what's the name of his hospital roommate? Mr.
Kirch.
Sorry?
Mr. Kirch or something?
Yeah, like that. Yeah, it's Mr. Kirch. And he's all wrapped up. He can't speak. He's nonverbal. Yeah, it's like, oh, I'm ready to go. And it's like, well, it's up to him. Well, why is he there? It's not for me to say. And so the walls are starting to close in on Lester, and he knows it. He tries to get away, which is kind of weird because he's like obviously on a third floor.
And the window's locked, so he jumps back into bed, and then his brother shows up.
Yeah.
And now his brother's like, I'm not an idiot, Lester. I can see what's going on here, and you better have some answers quick. And I just love that this is where I jumped ship on... Oh, hi, Lemon Pie. This is where I jumped ship on Team Lester because of how quickly he comes up with this evil plan to get out of this. And admittedly, switching places with Mr. Kirch and them not noticing for how long he must have been gone, not noticing that Kirch was missing and that kind of stuff goes on a bit longer than believable, but how he basically decides to frame his brother by taking the hammer, which Molly had gone back to look for and she couldn't find it because it had already been moved, and he takes the hammer and some photos and some laundry and he goes back to his brother's house and stuffs it in his ammo locker, and because the son Gordon is a bit, out a little wacky on the spectrum, as they say. Yes. He sees Lester, but he doesn't seem to register anything about it. So Lester just leaves and goes back to the hospital and just feels great about it, thinking that, oh yeah, I really beat the rap on this one. And it's like turning another dark corner for Lester's journey.
Well, yeah, and up until and as we've mentioned before, and I know that you had a little bit more sympathy for Lester than I did, just because of the murder. But yeah, he'd been beaten down. At this point, he's really turned, as you say, he's turned a corner into just scheming, conniving, saving his own skin no matter what. And he is part of the animal kingdom now. He's stuck it to his wife. He's not really involved in his boss. Sam Hess is taken care of. And now there's another person who's sort of underestimating what he can do, and that's his brother. So he's going to fuck up his brother's life.
Yes.
Uh,
He's
the,
infected by Malvo.
yeah. And yeah, that one domino that fell has made everything in Lester's life so much more cutthroat and mercenary. I was actually confused as to what was going on because he went home to grab the hammer, and I was like, okay, he's getting rid of the murder weapon. Then he goes back and he picks up the panties, and I was like, oh, come on, he takes some pictures. I thought he was like planning on going on the lam and wanted some mementos. And I was like, okay, I can understand getting the glamour shots of Pearl. But then when he goes, I'm like, okay, he's getting a gun. And then when he drops the panties in, I was like, oh, you sick son of a bitch. You're framing your brother. That's awful, especially considering how successful his brother has been. So him being beaten down and sort of looked down upon everybody in his life, now I can sort of understand why. He's an asshole.
Yeah, like his brother says, there's something wrong with you, Lester. There's something missing. And it's like, okay, so this isn't just that people are picking on Lester all the time. It's that there's something, like he was too timid to really do and say what he really was feeling all the time. And Malvo gave him a spine, which is the implication of all those tapes that he has in his briefcase, that he finds spineless people and gives them a spine to go out and, do things. And just how, notice how he hasn't even bothered cleaning up the blood at the crime scene. He didn't care. It's like, even his brother was disturbed by it when he went to his house briefly. He's like, oh, geez. Like, didn't they give you a number to call? He's like, yeah. He didn't call. He didn't care. Even though he hadn't planned on moving away necessarily, but he still didn't give a rat's ass about it, because why should he? He's just finally, like Malvo said, you're part of the animal kingdom now. You always have been, and now you're free. You can do what you want. And he certainly feels that way, and he's just becoming. It's like like once he did that, I'm not on team. Initially, I was sympathetic to him, but once I find out from the brother that there's something else there that's probably been there a long time, and now how he just effortlessly comes up with this evil plan like that, it's like, yeah, I can't follow this guy anymore. This fucker's gotta die.
Well, and that's also spoken to in the opening flashback when he gets the shotgun. He was supposed to go pick up socks. It probably would have cost him $5. And he was easily talked into, would you like some power in your life? Have a shotgun. It'll cost you only $50 more. And he's like, I do want that, just to have it, just so I can use it eventually. And it obviously is when Vern gets shot in the first episode, obviously the first time it's ever been used. And so it is just speaking to his character, his spinelessness, and maybe the people who, well, obviously Sam Hess. I don't know if he deserved to die, but that guy was a prick. But yeah, I
what he does for a living.
He's
because
trucker.
Those two guys came looking, so obviously he's up to shady shit. So,
It's a cutthroat world of regional trucking. So
those guys at Fargo at the Chinese restaurant did seem pretty intimidating. And the bag's like, yeah, you guys are some crime syndicate or some kind of. Hess must have been there transporting all their contraband and stuff. So yeah, right, screw him.
Yeah,
didn't die for the right reason necessarily, but nah.
No, but still, like, yeah, I'm okay with his demise. Although when they do go to the Chinese food restaurant, and I think this is the beginning of episode 6, is because it starts off with the fish swimming in the tank, and then you see the fish taken out, beaten over the head with a mallet, scaled, deep fried, and then sauced up and everything like that. I thought that was an interesting way to start an episode, and sort of the behind the scenes of what people do when they go to those sort of, you can choose your own lobster. And it's like, oh yeah, just don't think about what happens in the kitchen. So
I like the parallel with the fish at the end of the episode looking all dead and chopped up and everything when they fall on the road. And, some of them get hit by the tires and everything. It's like,
Yes. Well, and okay. Yes. But in episode 5, we do have Gus sort of going through events in his mind, trying to figure things out, trying to be a detective. And he meets with his next door neighbor, which this story, I love this story because it is, I don't know, the hubris of being the world's savior and what self-sacrifice you will go through to try and change things, but ultimately, do you? What price will you pay? Now, would you like to explain the story?
So the story is that this man who's rich finds out that there's evil, there's suffering in the world. He feels bad about it. So he donates $10 million to this charity. But there's still people suffering in the world. So he decides to donate a kidney, and it's great. But there's still suffering going on. So he asks the doctor if he can donate everything. And he's like, well, you can't really do that. You die. And so then he goes and slits his wrist in a bathtub and he wrote the word organ donor in permanent marker on the tile wall. And the Jewish neighbor who's telling Gus this story is like, yeah, he gave everything. And the gravestone even said he gave everything. And Gus is like, well, did it change anything? And the guy's like, well, you live in the world. What do you think? Mm-hmm. And Gus just feels that as such a cynical view of it. And he's like, well, you have to try, don't you? And the neighbor told the story, Jewish man doesn't have an answer for that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when he relays the story to Molly later, she's like, well, he could have started a charity or done something else, to help more people.
Do a little community service. You didn't have to go through all that. But that's also like in terms of Gus being naive in terms of his choices. And he is feeling the weight of that. Police work is something where you end up seeing a lot of the negative aspects of humanity as you are stopping crimes. It's not all just parking tickets and speeding tickets and whatnot. There are actual heinous crimes. And that can be a weight on people. And now that sort of Gus has been exposed to that through Malvo as well, in terms of being threatened with his livelihood and his own self-preservation taking precedence. He's like, well, he has to do something now. He's been confronted with it. He knows things about it, but he doesn't have the stomach for it. He doesn't have the heart for it. It's an interesting, but he is trying. He wants to, but he just isn't good at it. And we find out later on in episode 6 that he never even wanted to be a cop. He wanted to be a postman just so he could be a part of the community, like dropping off checks that people are waiting for, Christmas presents, seeing the same people every day. And so he is a really nice guy, but he certainly is not cut out for police work. And he says himself, I'm not a detective. And so it is that I think that he is somewhat attracted to Molly with her resolute nature. And I think that is appealing to him because it's something that he himself sort of lacks.
Well, yeah, even Vern said that about her. It's like, not Bill cleans his shotgun with bubble bath. You're gonna be the new sheriff for sure when I retire. He's like, you're the detective. You're the smart one. And Gus admires that in her, which is why even though he's still officially suspended, he's keeping tabs on the case and trying to follow up what he can. And so Molly does come to see him. He tells him that it seems that Malvo had an encounter with the Jewish neighbor, in which Malvo, milling around outside Stavros's house, because Gus wanted to kind of got the thought in his head, like, why would that Malvo have been out there? And he drives back there, and he's looking around the location, and Malvo drives by with Stavros and turns on the bright so he can't see him. But he makes sure to follow Gus home, and he parks in the little street courtyard out in front of the apartment complex. And, the Jewish neighbor walks up, and he's like, oh, I'm neighborhood watch. She's like, what are you doing here? Just hanging. Well, we don't need people hanging around in dark cars doing nefarious things. Like sitting. It's like, don't be a Canuck. And he's like, then he tells him, this is a nice neighborhood. Kids play in the street. My kids. We have block parties. We look out for each other. Someone dies, you bring a casserole, stuff like that. We don't need people like you around here. And he's like, and what apartment you live in? And the one next to the Jew van parked out front, the bar mitzvah thing. And he's like, there it is. So that's Malvo using a distraction method. Oh, I'll get this guy off me by just tricking him into thinking I'm just some anti-Semite guy. And initially it works, but then the guy pushes him even further on it. And Malvo tells him about how, the second floor apartments usually don't have the alarms on them. And yeah, man, wouldn't it be something if, the monster would come back to get, the kids and get you, basically pulling the same stunt on him that he pulled on Gus at the end of the first episode. And he's like, that's it. I'm going to go in. I'm going to call the police. And so he just leaves. And then Malvo surprisingly lets that kind of work. And he drives off. And he doesn't wait to spy on Gus anymore.
But he does know where Gus lives, which seems ominous. He had followed Gus back. Now, the reason Malvo was up at Stavros's place is that after the incident with the locusts, Stavros is just freaking out. He thinks it is God punishing him, and he's decided to pay. He's going to pay, and so it's $1 million, and he's going to go and get the money the next day. He talks to Malvo and says, "Pick me up in an hour. We're going to do this," and we're back to Chump. Back to Don Chump and his Turkish delight. And
we find out why he wanted to start a Turkish bath finally, because he's imagining all the young ladies that'll come to the Turkish bath because he wanted to meet them. It's like, oh, okay.
Story checks
out. And then one occasion when Malvo was driving Stavros back to his house, he tells him about the founding of Rome. And he says, I don't think that you said your guy was a Christian, right? I saw it in the stained glass, St. Francis, whatever. He's like, yeah, what about it? It's like, I don't think the Romans killed him for that. See, Rome, it was started by greatest human civilization started by wolves. Wolves are animalistic. They're vicious, and they see a man turn water into wine. What do? They kill him. It's kill or be killed. And he's like, what are you saying? And he's like really needling Stavros further to scare him into, ultimately giving up the ransom. And so the next morning when he goes to Don Chump's trailer, and Malvo, having revisited the guy who sells weird shit out of the back of his van, trying to sell him a pink police scanner. Does it look like I want a pink police scanner? Oh, maybe you got a lady friend. And in your experience, are police scanners things that ladies get wet for? It's like, this guy's just totally out to lunch, but he buys the stuff anyway. And he gets the voice box changer and he gives it to Don, who immediately picks it up. He's like, "Oh, I am your father." He just wipes it out of his hand. And he tapes it to the phone and he gives it to Don and he dials Stavros. He says, "Read this exactly as it is, word for word." And so he recites a Buddhist koan over the phone to Stavros, relating this story about a boy who knew all of the dangers of nature, basically, but decided to venture outside anyway and got devoured by wolves. And he's like, "You understand what I'm saying?" And Stavros is like, "Yes." And he says, "Galveston parking garage at high noon." So Stavros hangs up the phone. And Malvo's like, "Did it sound like he was gonna pay?" And Don's like, "I don't know what that sounds like." And this is after Malvo had locked Don inside the closet for overnight. You're a smart guy, you'll figure it out. Not having a bathroom, and you got to drill. I like the stupidity of this Don guy is just unbelievable. Just lets him lock him in the pantry all night, and he's still not curious about it. And of course, eventually Malvo just knocks him unconscious. He's like, "Yeah, I'll tell you who the boy is in the store if you just go get the duffel bag over there." Say, what's with all the duct tape?
Which is a terrifying situation. But yeah, but this is also this again. It harkens back to sort of what was it, Jerry in Fargo, William H. Macy's character, and he's like, "But this is my deal. This is my deal." Don still thinks that that this ransom or this blackmailing is his idea, his plan, and so he doesn't realize that when Malvo said, "You're working for me," that is the situation. It wasn't a partnership ever.
Yeah, I think it should be 60-40s, and I'm putting more on the line here. And I love it when he wakes up, duct taped to the exercise machine, and Malvo's just like, "Yeah, the 60-40 thing doesn't. I thought about it. Doesn't work for me."
Yeah, Which is, and that was one of those, like, there are certain things when I see in fiction, and you, even if you don't necessarily identify with the character, you can identify with a terrifying situation or a heartbreaking situation. And so Malvo knocks Chump unconscious, duct tapes him to an exercise bike, sets up a machine gun in the window, duct tapes a shotgun to Don's hands, and basically sets it up so that he will be killed by law enforcement coming to stop an active shooter in a neighborhood. And Chump is like, he's obviously terrified. Now, my thing is I like, obviously for the sake of the story, he had to, die. But he couldn't have just knocked himself over. Like, he couldn't have just rocked it over. But then we have no story.
Well, even if he did, he's still stuck with the shotgun pointing straight, what the cops are going to do. Because Malvo also put tripwires in the front yard so that way the SWAT guys would respond. And he's got the police scanner listening. And apparently the reason he uses this method to get rid of Don is because he wants to keep the police distracted in case Stavros has a change of heart and decides to finally call the cops. Because Stavros has since had his right-hand man, Stemko, take his son, Dmitri, away to some cabin in the woods because he's fearful, because one of the biggest plagues is the death of the firstborn son, and he's paranoid that this is all going to happen because he's still hyped up on the Adderall. And so Stavros, and this is an interesting point, he does go to the parking garage, and Malvo never shows up. So, or maybe he was going to, and Stavros has an epiphany that, because he's delusional enough at this point to think that God is actually the one punishing him and that it's not a legit blackmail scheme, he decides that I must make up for the original sin of stealing that money and put it back where I found it. So he leaves the parking garage, and they have the allusion to the movie where he's like, yeah, I've decided not to park here. But it ends much nicer this time because he's a much more, God-fearing man. And so he's like, son, do you go to church on Sundays? Yes. Well, you have to open this gate right now. Your Lord commands it. Which is great. And so Stavros, it doesn't look like the same location because there's tons of trees everywhere, but it's still getting the point across. He goes and he returns the money, and he puts the ice shaver there, and then he drives off content as the storm is passing that he's finally done what he had to do. Yeah, but then it seems that his son and Stemko get killed because fish start falling from the sky out of nowhere, is another sign from the Book of Exodus and the plagues, causing their car to spin and crash off the road into a telephone pole, flipping upside down, and they're both killed. And Stavros is devastated when he discovers this because he's like, I returned the money. Like, I don't know. And he's left a completely broken man at this point.
Well, and I look forward to seeing, I hope we get to see more of him. I don't know. But it was like the realization, because ultimately, like when we first meet Stavros, I wasn't sure whether or not I liked him. He was obviously full of himself based on his accomplishments, his breakup with his wife, kind of absurd and I wouldn't say cruel, but mean to his son Dmitri. And I was like, I'm not even 100% sure if I like him. But as he does sort of take control of the situation, at least as much as he thinks he can, I'm like, okay, well, he is at least trying to be a good man. And that's in this show, a person who's just attempting to do right is getting like check marks in the pro column from me.
Well, yeah, because it's like he's kind of mean to his son because his son's a dimwit. True. And he's got this former hockey player as his right-hand man who thinks a lot more of himself than he should. He's written a book, so he's a bit egotistical. His supermarket is a big success. The fact that he's able to, like he says, brings people July and January, makes him happy and proud, and thinks he's serving people, being a good, God-fearing man and making right by God and all this stuff. But it turns out it's not so much ego as he genuinely thinks he's doing the right thing, as he pledged, like that day he sold his soul to God. I will do whatever you need me to do to help other people if you save me from this situation. And that's what he thinks he's been doing this whole time. And so now he just seemed to think that, oh, because I didn't get that money, that money wasn't mine. I had no idea why I was there. I've been lying to people about where I got it, and so and it's kind of sad how that story kind of ends with him just completely at a loss for what happened, and Malvo just apparently unaware yet, I suppose, that Stavros is not going to return the money or drop off the money at the ransom point.
Right. And yeah, and it is interesting in terms like with the plague in Exodus, it was frogs, as seen in the movie Magnolia. But with this, it's the fish. I like I like how it is just building and building. I do want to find out how those fish get there, how they fall from the sky. But to see Dimitri die and the guy from the Winnipeg Jets, like Dimitri dying. That again, it's an innocent person who's paying the consequences for other people's actions. But speaking of people who are paying for other people's actions, we get to the action set piece at what would be the mid-season mark, I suppose. It seems that that our good friends Numbers and Wrench have found Malvo with a tip-off from local law enforcement in Duluth. They in what is being called the storm of the century in 2006, I think I recall it. A car in front of Malvo, as he's driving through a blizzard, stops suddenly. He puts on the brakes, hits the back of the car. Another car comes up behind, and for the first time, I don't think that Malvo's been armed. He's not been using a gun very often. This time he has a gun on the seat, falls into the passenger side, sort of where your feet go. And fucking Numbers is going off with like a machine gun into the car. And Wrench is coming up as well. And Malvo gets away. Sort of scurries out.
First one who got the gun, got the first one who got the guns off on Malvo too, right up at the driver's side door, or through the windshield. And it's like, shit, in Malvo, you see like legit fear for like the first time that, oh God, I'm cornered.
Yes, but still calculating, still able, definitely fearful, but working with it. Now, this is shortly after, as you mentioned, or as the situation has progressed. The tripwires are shooting off the machine gun from Chump's place. He gets blasted down by the cops. And no matter what Chump can do, he can't explain. There's a flashbang that goes off. He's killed by the cops. He's done.
Right as he got the tape off his mouth, probably from spitting on it so much. And he's like, wait, and they shoot him. And I noted that it was kind of ridiculous that because again, the guy in charge of this operation is that prick from Duluth. You hear over the radio, they're like, well, I guess it was suicide by cop. It's like, really? He's duct taped like crazy to the machine, and it must have been staged a suicide. It's like, no. It's like, what? But incompetence continues.
Yes. But this happens, and then Gus and
they're playing the music, and it is kind of sad because Don's an idiot. Yeah, he's not really a bad guy per se, not really, and it is like a horrifying thing as you're seeing what's about to happen, and then it does, and it's like, oh geez.
Well, and that's what I mean. It's a terrifying situation to have been manipulated and put in that position, and then even if it is through your own machinations of stupidity, you're sitting there and you're like, just the terror of knowing what is going to happen, and there's nothing you can do about it. So anyway, he's dead. Numbers and Wrench are shooting at the car. Malvo gets away and comes up with the idea. And also, Molly and Gus are at a nearby diner. And they hear this going out. Some guy walks in and says, they're firing in the streets. It's World War III. And so they go and they're heading towards the gun fire. Gus doesn't want to, but Molly is a cop. Her father was a cop. I am a cop, like my father before me, kind of thing. And she's heading towards it. And Malvo tries to get away in the snow, decides that he's going to have some sort of a trail so that the assailants, in this instance, Numbers, is going to follow him. So he cuts his hand. There's a blood trail behind him and to a door. I assume it's locked. So does Malvo. And so Numbers goes up to it. He tries to open the door, and then Malvo gets the jump on Numbers with a knife, sticks it between his ribs, and is just like, who? And Numbers says, Fargo. And so Malvo cuts Numbers' throat. Oh, by the way, Adam Goldberg getting stabbed. This is the second best time I've seen Adam Goldberg get stabbed. Obviously, the first best time was in Saving Private Ryan when he was pleading for his life to a German soldier. Anyway, so we don't know where Wrench went, but Numbers is dead. Malvo gets away, but everything is so like snow, and I really like the snow effect. Although I live in Canada, I've never seen snow that.
Yeah, like whiteout.
Yeah, like I've seen it when I was driving, but never when I was like walking.
Well, they did play up in the series that they were talking about how they expected the storm of the century, and everybody was trying to prepare for it. And Bill's like, "We're gonna get 2 feet of snow in one day."
This is true. So then Molly walks off into the white. Gus is sort of trying to get a sense as to where
they did find Numbers dead first, and when Molly walked off, I thought, why are you not waiting for Gus? Like, make sure Gus is right there with you. It's like you have zero visibility, and it's like, yeah, let's not tell Gus that you're going to take off. I was like, okay.
I thought that there was more gunfire off in the distance, and she was just sort of instinctively reacting.
Perhaps.
But still, you're right. It's the buddy system, same as swimming. So she goes off into the white. There's another exchange of gunfire. Gus is trying to find out where Molly is. And as he sees an image emerge from the snow, he says, halt. With approximately a second and a half later, he fires one shot and walks up to Molly, slumped in the snow. I'm assuming she's not dead. I don't know. So we'll like, I am. You were right last week when you said you're really going to like these 2 episodes. Now, I liked episode 6 better than I liked episode 5, but I am looking forward to seeing how things are going to keep going. And that's 2 law enforcement officers from Bemidji who have been shot in the course of this, in this show. So I don't know if Molly's going to die. Don't say nothing.
I won't say nothing.
But and then as we close out episode 6, after Lester has gone and done all of his conniving and his bullshit, he's back in his hospital room, and he just sort of smiles to himself on a job well done. Fucking prick.
I did find it interesting that Malvo didn't try and get more specific information from Numbers before he killed him. Fargo. Okay, and he just kind of finished him, and off they go. And now we know that Malvo and Wrench are still out there somewhere in the whiteout.
Yes, I am looking forward to. And you know what really occurred to me is that our Numbers was like the person who was the translator for Wrench, and now Wrench is out without anybody to understand him. He can't hear, and he cannot speak.
I think he can read lips, though, pretty well.
Really?
Or up to maybe a little bit. That is actually a real deaf actor, too, playing him. So.
Really? I did not know that.
I believe he also played the adult HW in that scene at the end of There Will Be Blood. When he's like, I've come to tell you, Father, that I'm opening another oil. Oh, you're going to compete against me. No, it's not it. But yeah, there's a great featurette on the Blu-ray where he's talking about ASL and the subtle differences, how you could accidentally insult somebody or whatever, and he's getting into that. It was really funny.
Wow.
But yeah, the guy's legit. He's cool.
Well, no, that he is really cool, and I didn't know for some reason.
That's Russell Harvard.
I thought he was the guy who played Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And then I was like, wait, no.
No, that's Jason Fleming, I think.
My mistake. But yeah, and so I'm looking forward to finding out I'm looking forward to the rest of this series. Now we're 6 down, 4 to go. But this is really engaging, with the same sort of weight and charm of character and sort of subtle humor that the movie provided. And not only that, but my interest for the rest of the seasons with different casts to play the characters and different time periods, like a good old-fashioned anthology show. I want to see these seasons progress, these stories beginning, middle, and end. One of my problems with things like The Walking Dead, or, well, let's just say The Walking Dead, because I can't think of another one right now, is I like zombie movies.
Mhm.
But I like zombie movies because they end.
Right.
I don't have to sit there for 7, 8, 10 seasons to watch the same thing happen over and over again with different twists, I'll grant you, like in and out characters and whatever. But I just like a story to end. But the show goes on. And so tickles my fancy to no end. This is great. I am so glad that we decided to do this. You know who I'm going to thank, though.
Yes.
Who's that?
John Hamm.
Yeah.
Or the guy who casted John Hamm, even though we have no idea what that season's gonna.
We don't know.
And that's gonna slow down quite a bit because that's gonna take 2 months to get through that. Because they're only airing one. Well, other than the premiere, will be 2 episodes, and after that, it'll be one a week.
Sure, and we'll see what we do in terms of the schedule. Maybe we'll be like week on, week off, do 2 at a time, or what have you. We don't know yet. I'm still in this one. And I obviously I kid because, John Hamm isn't here to talk to me about season 1. So I do thank you, Kat, for playing with me in this sort of sandbox that is Fargo.
Yeah, it's a great show.
Lemon Pie says, Malvo is like Dr. Phil, then just healing and empowering people. He's a great motivational life coach.
Okay, yeah, Malvo is a great motivational life coach, but I'm not sure if Dr. Phil so much empowers people so much as he is a grief vampire.
Cash you outside, how about that? Whoa, there you go. There's your meme from 10 years ago. Lemon Pie in reference to the gentleman who was giving everything permanent marker. That's not helping anyone. Who has time to clean that up?
Exactly.
And then Lemon, your next comment in reference to occurrences happening currently. The entire reason we're talking about Fargo is so we don't have to think about the things that are happening in the real world. Because heavens, yeah. You can hear all about it next week when we cover our CNN podcast. But also, and like this is just a quick one. We have a party to get to, but and speaking of parties, hey Ben, Cinema Gulp is here. If you guys are still in the Halloween spirit, no matter what time of year you happen to be listening to this particular show, you should check out Cinema Gulp's Halloween Spooktacular. Kat, you were a part of the Universal Monster Cavalcade of Horrors. But yeah, you should totes check out Cinema Gulp's channel. Always good stuff. And I think that there's a Lord of the Rings coming up soon. Yeah, no, there's Halloween stuff. There's a bunch of stuff going on over at Cinema Gulp. But hello. I was going to say something, but I forget because Ben distracted me. Yeah, well. Ooh, you know what we could do if we did the 2 and 2, like, because part of this, one of the reasons that I think that you were excited, and don't let me put words in your mouth, is we were talking about doing true crime as well. So maybe we could, if we had an episode, maybe we could do like a quick case, a quick crime that would be in the vein of the Fargs.
Yeah.
Just an idea. Those are your live show notes for today.
Hmm.
But yeah, and Cam says hi to Lemon Pie away from keyboard. But thank you, everyone, for being here. Kat, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
No, it's a great 2-episode mid-season kind of action turn plot twist section before we get into the last 4 here.
Yeah. Oh, it's gonna be great. I can't wait. And yeah, oh my god, if Lester gets away with it, I'm gonna flip a table. And in addition to Cinema Gulp, go subscribe to Antiderivative Jill's channel. And yeah, subscribe to me on X at ScottyR37. I post GIFs with funny captions. So yeah, I guess that's it. That's all. That's everything.
Yeah, you can find me Slice Night on Letterboxd and YouTube and X, but I don't really use it.
Yeah.
And Instagram, but I do use that one sporadically.
Oh, Kat, do we have a sign-off catchphrase?
I don't think we do for this series.
Did you want one?
If you got one.
I don't have one. Should we come up with one for next week?
Yeah, you betcha.